event tonight and to have you all here. We have two wonderful readers coming up, and make sure to check out, we've got a lot of gorgeous broadsides from there, here, and books, and as well as Gabriela's books. So I'll just introduce both of them and then we'll get started. So starting with Mare Blocker. Mare transforms books and prints into works of art, as I'm sure you've already seen. Accordion books that can be draped from a ceiling, photopolymer prints of hand-colored birds designed to draw attention to struggling wild bird populations, silk and thread-embellished moon covers with books hidden behind them. You can check those out here in the back. They're gorgeous. Mare has been making limited edition and unique books since 1976, and she established the M. Kimberly Press in 1984, when she bought her first Vandercook printing press. Her work can be found in over 85 public collections and museums, including the National Museum of Women in the Arts, the Victoria and Albert, the University of Washington Special Collections, and the Library of Congress. She teaches in the Art and Design Department at Pacific Lutheran University here in Seattle. And I'm going to introduce Gabriela as well. In her poem, The Statue of Liberty as a Woman, Gabriela Gutierrez y Mus writes, "She is not the tortured, broken torchlight of razors on a woman's hairless legs, the picnic basket bottomless filled with pleasure she is." Gabriela's work could be seen as such a basket. Her poetry spirals through carefully braided sounds drawn from both English and Spanish, and is driven by a relentless urgency, a need to rehumanize the dehumanized, to empower those from whom power has been stolen. Gabriela is the author of several books, and you can see a lot of them behind me now. She was first editor of the revolutionary Presumed Incompetent, The Intersections of Race and Class for Women in Academia. She's authored multiple articles, poetry collections, encyclopedia entries, and in 2015 was awarded the Provost's inaugural Award for Scholarship, Research, and Creativity at Seattle University. She also recently served as director for the Center for the Study of Justice in Society. Her collection, How Many Indians Can We Be?, is forthcoming with Mango Press in 2018. She also recently published The Runaway Poems with Finishing Line Press, along with a second edited collection of Chicana literary criticism about Norma Cantu's oeuvre called Word Images, New Perspectives on Canicula and Other Works by Norma E. Cantu, with the University of Arizona Press. So let's welcome both of them.
Hi. I'm going to read from these picture books and do it sort of like a children's story time. I'm going to show you the pictures because for me sometimes the pictures and the words go together. This book is titled Blood on Blood, and the title comes from a NPR interview with Johnny Cash. I still listen to a lot of Johnny Cash. And Johnny Cash has this theory that the most rich songs come from the layering of voices in a person's family. So when he's singing with his family, those are his richest songs. This is a book of tiny micro short stories. They're letterpress printed, and they're about my family. So this one is titled, Did They Use a Sewing Machine? Mark and John and I used to share a room. Mark and I had bunk beds, and John had a little bed. We liked to jump on that little bed. Once my head hit Mark's chin while his tongue was sticking out. It was bit off except for one little vein holding it on. My mom was on the phone, so we didn't bug her with it. She discovered it later at lunch when she fed Mark some tomato soup and his tongue fell out of his head. Okay. I have to admit that it wasn't until I was in my 20s that we went to my grandfather's house, and my grandfather was an artist, and they said they were sewing his tongue back on. I thought, they're using a sewing machine. This one is about a grandmother. You could tell what day of the week it was by the color of her teeth. She must have had 4 or 5 pair. This one is called The Powers of Persuasion. I convinced my brother that I was magical, and if we jumped off the roof of the garage with me riding on his back, we would fly. We landed with a thud and a broken leg in the garden. After he got his cast off, we tried it again. I'm pretty sure I got a spanking the second time. These are fingers and these are leeches. Throw it. When I was 12, I was in Kansas for the 4th of July. My cousin Jeannie was shooting off black cat firecrackers when something went off a little early and her hand blew up. It was gross looking for her fingertips in the tall bloody grass. What was really gross were the leeches they made her wear so her fingers would stay on.
Yikes.
The bee story. We were at a family reunion, and one of my other Kansas cousins was allergic to bees. Well, a bee went into her pop can and she swigged. The bee stung her in the throat, and her throat swelled shut. So her dad, my uncle, whipped out his penknife and gave her a tracheotomy right there in the American Legion grass. It was before 911. She suffocated before the ambulance got there. Also, the blood on blood theme has another blood theme too. This one is, we ate there once. I swung a chicken around like a pom-pom at my cousin Teresa's house. Its head came off in my hand and its body ran around the yard. That same night we skimmed the flies off the warm milk before dinner. There's a bunch of stories. There weren't any warning labels then. Mark got his head stuck under a lawnmower when we were kids. The blade was going when he looked under the chassis to check the clogged grass, and his head lodged between the frame and the blade. The fireman had to come. He's lucky he's not bald. It's true. You have to laugh at these kind of things that happen, right? Because otherwise you'd be crying all the time. I'm looking for the gerbil one. Oh, here we go. The life cycle incident. When my mother was pregnant with John, we had some talks. To illustrate the situation, we got a gerbil. The gerbil got big. We watched the squirmy little gerbils with closed eyes come out. It was sweet. That's what's going to happen when Mommy has her baby, kids. We went to sleep. The next morning, I discovered all the baby's heads had been chewed off. I had a show of these stories downtown at a Weston Lieberman Books, and we framed all the pages of the stories in the gallery. And my parents, sometimes I get a little too autobiographical, let's say. And my parents had decided they weren't going to come to my shows anymore. So I was like, okay, it's safe to do this book about our family. And my parents got like a minivan and brought everybody to the show. I was like, damn. And so then my dad was sort of like, oh, I'm the artist's father. And my mom was like, that story did not happen like that. All night. I grew up in Seattle, and my family had the souvenir concession at the Space Needle in the public market. And my grandfather, I worked for my grandfather as a small child, painting little trees in his paintings, and he had this souvenir concession around the Bubbleator. So I spent a lot of time at the Space Needle and the Seattle Center, going back and forth, handling all the money for their businesses in a little backpack. So this one's called the Space Needle. I like to say I grew up in the fun forest. I can't remember how old I was, early teens anyway, and I was working for Grandma and Grandpa delivering change at the International Bazaar. I was coming down the ramp of the monorail at the same time someone jumped off the needle. I never did know if it was a man or a woman, only that I was splashed with their blood. Okay, I'm going to read one more from this book. So my dad died a few years ago, and I inherited his garden. But I used to spend a lot of time in the garden planting exotic things. This one's called The Big One. My dad and I gardened together. My mom too. I planted something exotic every year. 1 year peanuts, 1 year cantaloupes. The year I went to Lutherland, it was watermelons. I had an inch-long watermelon before I left for a week of Bibles, swimming, and plastic lanyards. My second cousin Sandy brought me back in her Mustang. She was cool. The first thing I did when we got home was check my watermelon. It was huge. We ate it right then. It was years before I realized the melon was cold, even though it was August. This book is back that way, and it's a book about the moon, and these are all recycled prints that I've overprinted, and in case any of you are printmakers, they're holographed prints that I made with glitter, and you glue the glitter down to the plate and ink the glitter up. And when I work in my studio, I do listen to NPR a lot, and Audible books now. And one of the things that inspired this book was an interview with a bunch of veterans' wives and how they cope with their husbands and their husbands being away during their tours of duty. And my husband and I have spent a lot of time apart because he's been a fire lookout. He's retired now. And so this is a combination of those two things. You in the field and me in our bed, alone. Blessed memory. An unbroken circle, everywhere and nowhere. Horizon line. Anticipation. If the moon rises tonight, we'll simultaneously gaze upon her face. If the moon rises tonight, you will return. I'm working on a community dictionary right now, and I passed out almost 200 linoleum blocks to people, and it's like the floor tile, and you carve it, and you have to carve it backwards, and that's what I've been. The broadsides by the front door are all carved, and then I print them. And so this is a poem that shows up in the community dictionary. It started out as a poem called Famous Lines, and in the community dictionary I have 6 or 7 poet friends included in the dictionary, and their prompt was use it in a sentence, please. So the way the format is use it in a sentence, please, and then line, like the spelling bee. Line, the fine line, the horizon line. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Online, hairline, fracture. The line up, the thin line between love and hate. The phone line, the one you crossed. So Buzz and I, if you have been to the Suzzallo Library, in the lobby of the where the Allen Library and the Suzzallo are combined, there's a big installation piece of ravens in there. Has anyone seen it? That's my work. And I did that with, it was a 1% for the art piece with Carl Chu, J.T. Stewart, who is a poet, and Ron Hilbert, who is Vi Hilbert's son. And it was a group of pieces called Raven Brings Light to This House of Stories. And so ravens have always played a big part in my life, and in my artwork, and I also like to write poems by taking a random book, and I call it the Guardian text, and then I'll pick out a random phrase from the Guardian text and start writing, and then when I get stuck, I go back to my Guardian text and find another phrase. And so this is a piece of that is from my Guardian text was North American Guide to Birds. Bow deeply several times towards the apparently indifferent female. Bowing low, perhaps twice, he utters his love song, caressing the head of the other, a love rattle in flight. So, this book I did in 1998, and it's a book of love poems on love pieces to my husband Buzz. He wasn't my husband at that time. We were just friends, and he was my neighbor in Jerome, Arizona, so he was a river guide on the Colorado River, and he only got mail during the summer when he went through Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So I started sending him pictures of the two of us as art history figures. I don't think we realized at the time we were recording. And they came in these giant envelopes. So this is me as the birth of Venus.
Oh, yeah.
This is me as the Virgin Mary, and him as the Christ child. Oops, you get the idea. This is from that Frida and Diego painting. This is Venus and Cupid. So they're all hand colored. They're linoleum block carvings. It's sort of in the vein of those Scheherazade stories. If you tell enough good stories, then the person they're gonna fall in love with you. That was my plan, yeah. So, we're about to celebrate our 20th anniversary now. And this broadside is back in the on the wall. You are a song, a wished-for song. I wore green stones around my neck. I burned the list of fear. I asked Raven to bring me a partner who made me laugh, who respected my work, who loved me very much, who was faithful to me, who would be my family. The song of ravens is a low one, a charm around another's neck, a burning porch light. Music I am learning to listen for, music I am learning to sing. I would love to kiss you. The price of kissing is your life. I kissed him gladly. So I also carved a broadside for one of Gabby's poems, and it's on the wall too. And you can buy both of the poems together if you want for a Valentine discount thing. And I didn't print a huge edition of them or anything, but I'm going to introduce Gabby now.
I love Mare.
Yeah.
I met Mare more than 30 years ago when I met my husband, and she was one of the first friends that he wanted. She was his masterpiece friend that he wanted to introduce me to, and I've been so influenced by her in so many ways. Her strength, her commitment to her, printing presses, and this is you're seeing the tip of the iceberg, because Mare has hundreds of projects and books of all sizes, and I want there to be a museum just for your work, because you are such an incredible feminist role model that is just, she supported so many women into being, so many artists. I also brought one of the first pieces that she published for me, and it's over there on the wall, in 1994. And just this enduring strength and love and beauty and commitment to art that is so hard to find, no matter what. Mare is working on her books, and I just love you, Mare. You have no idea how much you've influenced my life. Thank you. Thank you for reading with me today.